Good evening. It's Wednesday, December 29th, and I would like to do a report for all the children that were murdered today in 17 locations, 17 MILAB locations. 2,301 children were murdered today, and they were brought over from China. And all these children, the youngest child was 1 year and 8 months old, and she was a little girl. And when I pulled up her DNA, I saw her face, and she was one of the most beautiful little girls I've ever seen in my life. She had jet black hair, it was straight, it was kind of like spiky, and she was just such an adorable child. I try to hold it together. It's been a kind of rough report. And the oldest was a 9-year-old boy. He was 9 years and 9 months old. And there's this horrible monster. I don't know if I can pronounce his name right. It's like Jinping, and he's the self-proclaimed emperor of China. And I met his temporal just recently, and apparently I'm the first person in Earth's history to tell an emperor of China that he's welcome to drink out of a toilet. And for good reason. He had his army. It was on Christmas Day, our Christmas Day. He had his army invade a ghetto of outer Shanghai, and they abducted 2,656 children. And they were all aged from 0 to 9 years old. Well, 9 years and 9 months was the oldest child. And what they did was they took 355 of the youngest of the children that were aged from, 0, I think 3 months was the youngest child, and then the oldest child of this group was just younger than the girl I saw at 1 year and 8 months. And they went into this ghetto, and they basically abducted all these children, 2,656 of them, and they just took them away. And of course, this really freaked out some of the adults. 12 mothers were killed in the process. One of these mothers, it's not ruled a suicide, but she killed herself because they just basically ripped her child from her arms, which is so typical. This is what we do in the United States to children too. And they kept these children, and they killed each one of them. They took a DNA sample of each one of these children, which they could very easily grow clones out of these children or whatever. And the blood, they drained all the bloods of these children when they were, and then the blood is being saved, or it's already been processed for the Rothschild family. And all these governments are working together, China, Russia, United States, and Europe. They're all working as a group against us. And if you think there's a difference between the United States or Russia or China, then you need to do some more research, because they're all in the same team, and they all rape and murder children, and they do it, I was told yesterday, because they feel that they will be rewarded in the afterlife the more times they rape and murder children. And all these kids were taken to the Shanghai MILAB, and then they were put onto, the 2,301 children were put on a 4-level cargo plane, and it was flown to Nellis Air Force Base in Nevada, which is just outside of Las Vegas. And I pulled up the DNA of the pilot. He had 22 years in the Air Force, and there were eight members of the Air Force that were flying this plane. The crew was 8 members, and they raped 12 children 18 times in the flight from China to Nevada. And then 320 of those children were taken to Crawfordsville, 37 to Indianapolis, and 412 children of this group were taken to the Pentagon. Many others to the New York Financial District MILAB, Washington, D.C. number 2, Arlington, Langley, Dallas, Houston, Chicago number 2, Lincoln, Nebraska, Carson City, San Bernardino, California, San Jose, Los Angeles, MILAB number 1, and also Albuquerque, New Mexico. And this is just another day. Just another day. There's so many children to keep track of. Here, the man who's acting as our governor, Mike Pence, has raped now 102 children and murdered 17 of them. Mitch Daniels has raped 72 children now. I'm sorry. 76. I'm sorry, 76 children, and has murdered 12. Can I verify 12? 12 children. Thank you. And there's this one horrible criminal. He's called a state-level senator. His name is Brent Waltz. And I overheard him today, saying that, oh, well, I'll leave the expletive out so I don't have to put an adult rating on it. But he said, well, I never a Chinese baby before. And this monster parading as a state senator has witnessed Mike Pence murder 3 times, including somebody that I'm very concerned about, a little boy named Scott. Scott was a 7-year-old child. He was abducted in Aurora, Colorado, and he was brought here, and he was raped 108 times by 42 Indiana men. And Scott Waltz, I'm sorry, I was calling him Walker, but his name, Brent Waltz was one of the men who raped little Scott. And so was Indiana Attorney General Greg Zeller. And little Scott was murdered by Pence while he was raping him. But what really bothers me about people like this Brent Waltz dude is because he likes to masturbate while watching Pence rape little boys. And he was masturbating while he watched Pence murder Scott. Scott is now cocooned in heaven. Most of these children are so freaked out about what happens to them. And heaven calls this freak out deaths. It's when we don't handle the death process well, or the trauma right before our death. And Father God puts us into a cocoon like a butterfly, and there we stay. And Scott is still, let's see, how long has Scott, in Earth time, how long has Scott been in the cocoon? 4 months? No, I'm sorry, I can't. I'm too upset to read that. They put that, it's like some people call them computers or whatever, but there's a second internet. Actually, it's the real internet, and not the one that we use here, but there's also another internet that heaven provides for the universe, which you can tap into. But I just, when I saw this little girl, this little baby that was 1 year old and 8 months, that I just kind of lost it, because these children are so helpless and so innocent, and these CIA agents and the DARPA and the FBI and these politicians and CEOs and corporate executives and all these men who rape and murder children, they consider themselves brave warriors. And, which I disagree with, because I don't think it takes a really strong, brave warrior to tackle down a 4-year-old girl and rape her and kill her. I don't. And, obviously because I have very strong feelings about child trafficking. My sister used to get gang raped when she was a child. She had an abortion when she was 11 years old. And I thank you for your prayers.